The Memphis Grizzlies currently have a top 20 net rating in the history of the NBA, outscoring their opponents by 9.7 points per game, which is led by top 5 offense and defense. Yet no one's talking about them. Memphis have been one of the best teams in the NBA so far this season, as they currently find themselves the 2nd seed out in the Western Conference. On the season, the Grizzlies have been one of, if not the best two-way team in basketball, as their 5th ranked offense generates 117.2 points per night, while their 4th ranked defense limits opponents to just 107.5 points per game. Both these numbers are definitely championship level, but it's their ranking for 1st in pace which makes them such a potent offense. The Memphis Grizzlies play at the fastest pace in the NBA, and a lot of people think pace just means sprinting the ball up the floor every time. Although that's part of it, it's not all of it. Pace basically means the amount of field goal attempts you get up as a team per game. So running the ball up the court is definitely part of it, but the main part is just simply generating better looks earlier in a shot clock, which will then give you more shots over the course of an entire game. For some teams, this strategy simply wouldn't align with their offensive system, as they wouldn't be able to generate high percentage looks that quickly. Take the Boston Celtics, for example, who even though they have a better offensive rating than the Grizzlies, boasting the 3rd best offense in the NBA, they play at the 20th slowest pace in the league. This is because Boston likes to get into that drive and kick game, which takes more time off of each shot clock, meaning they get less shots up, but they're still able to generate more points, which just shows you how impressive their offense is. However, as we've seen sometimes this season, the 3-point shot can betray the Boston Celtics, but as the NBA continues to zig, the Grizzlies keep zagging. The Grizzlies offense is one that relies on different factors. For people who aren't fans of the amount of 3-point shots that are taken in modern NBA games, the Memphis Grizzlies might be the team for you. They lead the NBA in points in the paint per game, scoring 58.7 points there per night. While they also rank high for points off turnovers at 6th, they're ranked 4th for second chance points and 4th for fast break points. But not only do they rank high in these metrics, but they also limit their opponents in these metrics, as they're 29th in opponents' points off turnovers and 20th in opponents' second chance points. All these stats are to say the Memphis Grizzlies play with a very high level of hustle, which they use to hurt you on both sides of the ball, playing a hard-nosed defense. But their biggest advantage came from a travesty of a season. Last year was one of the most unluckiest seasons in NBA history, with Ja Morant only being available for 9 games, and he wasn't alone, as Desmond Bane missed 40 and the newly traded for Marcus Smart missed 62 games. Their quote-unquote most healthiest player was Jaren Jackson Jr., who played just 66 games, still missing 16. Just look at the amount of players who played for the Grizzlies last season, as they set an NBA record for players on a roster throughout the course of a season. Many teams would have waved the white flag and conceded this to be a bad season, but the Grizzlies used this unlucky season to fuel the good one, and it's something teams need to be taking notice of. Last year's curse of a season was almost a blessing for this one, as it allowed them to play their young guys and bench unit guys more minutes, making them so much more confident and effective this season. With no Ja Morant and Desmond Bane, this opened the door for many things, such as Jaren Jackson Jr. getting to run the offense, as the ball was put in his hands, which has made him a lot more of a threat this season. We also saw the rise of G.G. Jackson Jr. and Vince Williams, who both haven't suited up for a single minute this season due to injuries, but they both aren't far off of returning, making the deepest team in the NBA even deeper. This time also allowed Memphis to find another gem of a backup point guard with Scottie Pippen Jr., who's now averaging 10.6 points, 5.2 assists, and a steal on an effective field goal percentage of 53%. Outstanding for Ja Morant's backup PG. But out of these 3 developments, the Jaren Jackson Jr. one was the most impactful. Jackson Jr. was already a Defensive Player of the Year winner, but for him to add to his offensive arsenal has made him one of the best two-way players in the game. On the season, he's averaging 21.4 points, 5.8 rebounds, 1.5 steals, and 1.4 blocks on an effective field goal percentage of 57%. But to understand just how he got to this point, we have to look at last season. At a quick glance, you might think last season was a career best year, as he averaged a career high 22 points per game. However, when you take a deeper dive, what you see is his least effective year shooting the ball, as he had an effective field goal percentage of just 49%. This was because of the fact that his usage rate was the highest of his career, because the Grizzlies were missing Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Draymond and Marcus Smart for basically the entire season. So in this time, he had to be the focal point of the offense, shouldering much of the scoring load. But his usage rate of 30% wasn't just the highest of his career, but it was the 13th highest usage rate in the entire NBA last season, which is absolutely not supposed to be his role within the team's offense. So this obviously led to an inefficient shooting season. However, this trial by fire has perfectly set him up for this one. The leap from 49% effective field goal percentage to 57% is a noticeable jump, and that's because his usage rate has gone back down to normal, but now being a lot more confident within that role, allowing him to now be a hyper-effective player. Now that he's back to a complementary role, he's giving the Grizzlies a lot more offense in a lot more ways. One of those ways is driving the basketball, which he's now became elite at for his position, as you could make a compelling case that he's one of the best ball-handling bigs in the NBA right now. That's how good we're talking. Off the bounce with the ball in his hands, he has just been so effective driving to the basket this season, especially given the extra space he now has with Moran and Bane. He's a borderline 7-footer with a 7'4" wingspan and a frame of 250 pounds of pure muscle. And now that he's ascended into an elite ball handler for his size, you've now got a downhill threat that's nearly impossible to stay in front of, even for the best defenders in the NBA. Attacking the basket is one thing, but what makes Jaren Jackson Jr. such a dominant force is definitely his ability to finish plays from basically anywhere. He can size you up with a ball handle to get into his post-up game, and he's able to step up and make a catch-and-shoot three, which he does at a 36% clip. But that's not all, as he can also operate very effectively in a post-up, getting into his deep bag of tricks where he has hook shots and great footwork to create angles to score. His offensive game is all of a sudden so diverse, making it incredibly hard to pick exactly what he's going to do on each possession. And it's not like he's attacking mismatches or anything, because you constantly see Jaren Jackson Jr. take the ball at guys like Anthony Davis, Kristaps Porzingis, and Draymond Green, some of the best defenders in the NBA, and they don't even have an answer for him. That's just how dominant he's been this season. Then when we look back at last season, his defense also wasn't as good as it had been in the past, and that was because he had to shoulder a lot of burden at the 5. But now with Zach Edey entering the frame and the return of Brandon Clark, he's been able to go back to the 4 once again, the position he won the Defensive Player of the Year in. Playing the 4 allows him to be more of a free safety on defense, disrupting shots and making smart rotations, compared to playing at the 5 where you have to be the last line of a defense, and it's just a more physical role which didn't suit his playstyle. So with Jaren Jackson Jr. playing at an all-star level, this has been a major contributing factor to the Grizzlies being one of the best teams in the NBA right now. But it certainly isn't the only reason, as the return of Ja Morant has obviously had a lot to do with their resurgence back to the top of the West. Ja's having, in my opinion, his best season in the league, even though the numbers don't say so. Scoring-wise, he's been able to let a guy like Jaren Jackson Jr. help with that load, as he's gone from a mid-20s per game scorer to 21 points a game this season. Now, a lot of that certainly has to do with him having an ineffective year shooting the ball, only converting with an effective field goal percentage of 50%, the second lowest mark of his career. But it's been the playmaking leap from Ja Morant that's been the most impressive. Over the last 3 seasons, he's averaged 8.1 assists all 3 times. But this season, those assists have been a lot more valuable. He's not like some guys who just rack up a lot of assists because of how much attention they garner, as Ja is legitimately running the Grizzlies' offense. Some of the passes he's made so far this season are legitimately elite, as he's turned himself into not only one of the best slashers in the NBA, but now a legitimate playmaking weapon. He seems to have a much better feel for the game this season than in seasons past, which has absolutely done wonders for the Grizzlies as a team. In the seasons past where he didn't have as good of a feel for the game as he does now, he was very beatable come playoffs, as teams would sag off of him, forcing him to take jump shots or attack into a crowd of defenders. And although teams are going to still try this tactic and might have some success with it, he now has the ability to beat you with the pass. Similar to the evolution of Giannis Antetokounmpo, teams started to build walls against him, so he leveled up his playmaking to be able to counter it. And the same is happening with Ja Morant, as he's going to be able to bust the wall at times by making the right pass and trusting his teammate to make an open shot. With Bane and now the much offensively improved Jaren Jackson Jr. alongside of him, it isn't going to be any near as simple as it was in the past to contain him. He still gives you those highlight plays where you can't even believe what you just saw, but now he's added the level of smarts to his game that makes him feel like a legitimate challenge to any defense. Just recently, I asked you guys if you thought the Memphis Grizzlies were legitimate title contenders or not, and here were the results. Let me guys know what you think about these results in the comments section below.